Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming, and for the first time in quite a while, the topic of Dragons Dogma 2. The last time I talked about this confusing game was a couple months ago, and that's a shame because it's a game I really enjoyed, but I definitely felt it could have used more content. So when I last talked about it was that big title update patch in the middle of September, as the first kind of big post-launch patch that shook things up in a more real way. It introduced the new casual mode, vocation balancing, and certainly needed performance improvements. Now we did hope at the time that that was going to be a sign of change, and just before that, the director, Itsuno, had just left Capcom in a surprise twist. This big patch followed on not long after that. So it did make us wonder, like, was that a patch that he was working on before he left, or was it actually the difficulties of him leaving and his departure that held it back? We don't know. But the patch was very welcome, even if I still found it a bit confusing, since it was obviously very overdue and featured the concepts of what we were looking for, but not exactly it. Take the vocation balance changes. We would have liked them sooner, sure, because we want to see improvements for underused skills or things that round out a class a bit better. Now, whether these changes hit or not, it's definitely the right start. But for me, it was somewhat confusing that we had a casual mode introduced to the game, a way to make the game noticeably more forgiving, when, in my opinion, what we would have preferred, or at least I would have preferred, was a harder mode instead. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, maybe a lot of people benefited from a new, easier mode, and if so, great. But on the bright side, it did give us that hope. Now we've got that difficulty system in place, maybe we will see other modes like, yes, a harder one soon. And while we did get more updates after that, they were certainly sparser than the big one. For relevant ones, we had 2 in October. October 17th, we had new options introduced under the graphics menu to pick between prioritizing graphics and prioritizing performance. Naturally, performance has been a big issue for the game and still actually remains somewhat of an ongoing issue at that. So it's nice to see them continue to try to address it, even now with these new options. That continued with the next update at the end of October on the 31st with our next update. Basically, this addressed some bugs going on and introduced a balanced option for the graphic settings too. But again, it was a very small patch overall. To be positive about it, we did go a surprising amount of time without updates of this nature or that bigger title patch update. So seeing regular updates, whatever they are, is still good and hopefully a sign of change. It's just that I think there's a bigger issue at hand, and that's shown through the general response to these updates. It's the lack of an expansion, or DLC, to really uplift the game and use that big foundation that they worked on and built to then do more with it. That's the big critique for the game right now, I think. More content. The future of the game in general. We want a DLC, and surely they'd want that too. I think a good amount of the remaining hopeful community was excited for an announcement about this at the Tokyo Game Show, where DD2 was simply not mentioned at all. And so when we look at, say, their social media page on Twitter, after, say, recent big events where there could have been word about it or news, the social media pages would instead post a meme, like right around the time people would go look and check. It's like they knew people would go and look. I mean, if you think about it, let's say you were hoping for something new, and maybe you didn't watch an event that lasted hours to see if there was like a minute about DD2. So, to see if there was an announcement, you go to their official social pages, and rather than find anything new, you instead find a kind of silly meme posted roughly around the time of no announcement. It's fair that people are a bit bitter. On the bright side, Dragons Dogma 2 actually won an award recently. Apparently it was for excellence at the Japan Game Awards 2024. So there's still people in the industry who look at this game fondly. And I still think that Capcom, for them, it's still a big success in terms of sales. But let's just have a look at some of the top comments under that post about the award. I would say there was a good amount of people sharing their congratulations, which is obviously nice. But of course, there's still that negative pile of people talking about the lack of updates or DLC announcement. And people really expected one, and I did too. It was also recently nominated for the Best RPG at the upcoming Game Awards. And under that post about, hey, we've been nominated, the top post by far is actually a mix of both positive and very negative thoughts. It's someone who clearly loves the game, but doesn't want it to win any awards based on what they call laziness, which I think is obviously unfair, but I understand the frustration. They made the game, they took years to do it, a lot of time and effort and money was put into it. Just because we want more updates and want more content and want a DLC doesn't mean it just happens out of nowhere. It also takes a long time for it to be produced. So even if they were actually still making it against all hope at this point, calling them lazy while they might be doing that, I don't think it's good. And with them semi-regularly updating the game now, even if they are small patches, I think anything considered content would still go a long way to kind of counteract that negative feeling. We don't need anything insane right now. I think of that new mode for easier play and the vocation balance changes that gave it any inch of new life. Add a harder mode. Do some more vocation balancing to make the still underused skills a lot more worth it. You could even make them nuts. Say the lesser used vocations such as trickster, make that stupid good. They could add new skills and gear to the current lineup and put in maybe some new weapons or armor. Maybe even just use the current models and change what's on them. And that's why this post is so interesting. This actually occurred back at the end of September and was posted by Capcom Europe. Prepare for new armor and battles ahead. Those seeking this coveted set may want to visit Batal. So it's a new armor set, but it's not new. What it actually is the cover art armor set that we'd been expecting to get in game and then we never got. And now they finally put the full thing in the game. That's kind of what I'm talking about. They could do things of this nature, but this is purely just visual. I want new skills and things that are more impactful. But it was interesting that they said battles ahead is like the only hopium we have for new content. Basically, I'm just thinking that there are things they could do with the current game to change it up, to give a feeling of new content and a reason to jump back in, even for a week. Obviously, actual new content would be best. I just think those ideas I referenced, some of them at least, are reasonable. People call for something similar to the DLC of the first game, a proper kind of endgame dungeon, and we've seen roguelike mechanics go a long way for the longer life of a game like this. But I think that's probably leaning too much into DLC at that point, so yeah, while we'd like it, it's probably a lot to ask. Now, as there was nothing at the recent events, and especially the Tokyo Game Show, what's the last hope for the immediate future? I think it's probably the Game Awards. The thing is, we do expect Capcom to talk about Monster Hunter, and hopefully its demo announcement. It almost feels like they're not going to have room for something like DD2 there, which again, is a big part of why we thought TGS would be hopeful as an event for that. So it's hard to feel like Dragons Dogma 2 isn't a priority for Capcom right now, and it's hard to keep up the hope that there's more coming for it. So in regards to Hideaki Itsuno leaving Capcom after 30 years, we do know that he's starting a new project. This is the man who directed both Dragons Dogma 2 and Devil May Cry 5. They're successes for Capcom. And in his farewell post, he explained that he's not done with game development. He stated that from September, he will begin developing a new game in a new environment. That he wants to create fun, beautiful games that are as memorable or even more memorable than the ones he's been part of so far. So he's certainly not done, but what does this really mean? Are we talking a completely new IP outside of what we've seen from him so far? Or will it be more like a spiritual successor game? Maybe what he wanted to make for Dragons Dogma, but couldn't. It's not an alien idea. Plenty of people have left big companies like Capcom to do their own thing before. Maybe there's distant hope that we'll get something more accurate to what we wanted from Dragons Dogma, just not officially named Dragons Dogma. Itsuno has been vocal in the past about wanting a budget and the support to achieve his vision for that game, and then that was also memed on a bit after the issues that occurred post the release. Maybe he just couldn't do it with Capcom and what they were willing to do. Although, on the other hand, what if it wasn't Capcom's issue and it was Itsuno? We simply don't know. And that's a big part of what makes the waiting and having hope for more a bit difficult these days. They haven't given us any indication of either direction, if we'll get more, or elsewhere, or what. So yeah, who knows? That brings me, sadly, to the end of this general talk and discussion. Dragons Dogma 2 and its Hope DLC, at this point, I'm not really sure it's going to happen anymore. If there's nothing at the Game Awards, then I'm just probably going to accept that concept in my head. I enjoyed my time with the game either way, even if I might have wanted more from it. But who knows, maybe the regular updates will introduce new content and reasons to jump back in. And maybe whatever Itsuno goes on to next will be worth that wait. Let me know what you guys think. But for now, I've been Hollow, you've been you. Thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.